Most of the eastern part of the United States. It actually goes all the way back to the Mississippi River, enjoying some gorgeous weather. There were some exceptions, though, particularly in upstate New York and in northern New England. But we're rolling along and heading into a weekend, and we will talk about that. We will also take a look at the Pacific tropics because there is some potential for a tropical depression to form east of Hawaii. And I can't think of much else because weather across much of the country is a tad on the quiet side. But we're never quiet here. We shout from the rooftops Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. right here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the description to this podcast. Use the coupon code
Summer 2024.
because if you use it, you'll get.
10 big percent off.
That's right.
Yeah.
55 was my low this morning here in the
Beat
mountains
you.
of North Georgia. You
I
beat
beat you.
me. Well,
Got
I
down to,
was.
yeah, what?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I got down to 50.
Really?
And the 57 that was registered at Central Park was the first time in 17 years that Central Park recorded a temperature in the 50s in the month of August.
Is it 17 years?
17
Wow.
years have come and gone, and they had not
Wow.
had a temperature in the 50s in August at Central Park, but that broke today. So that means that the last time we did that was 2007.
Well, why? I'd be curious in terms of raw numbers, what the frequency of 50s in August was prior to the year 2000. I mean, that would take time for somebody to go ahead and research that, and I have no intention of looking that up. So, but it'd be kind of interesting to know uh, just how many times it's gotten in the 50s and going maybe decade by decade to see how that count has, changed over the course of 160 some odd years.
I remember in 1976, don't ask me why I remember the year specifically, but at the end of August,
It got cold. I remember it getting cold. I mean, I remember it getting cold early.
yeah, well, it was like 50 or 52 degrees. I think we actually set a record at the end of August in that year. And I know now why I remember it because I was living in Throgs Neck, and the clarity of the sky was so amazing. I mean, I was seeing stars that I normally would not see from the city, from the Bronx. So it was a clear, transparent, chilly, if not downright cold, end of August. But it was enough so that the air was very, very pristine, very clear, and that date stands out in my memory as a day when August day when the temperatures were in the 50s in New York City. But this morning, again, 57 at Central Park, and here at little old Putnam Valley, 50 degrees. Pretty chilly, and it may see temperatures tomorrow morning at or maybe even a touch below that. Believe it or not.
Yeah, depending on what the wind does overnight.
Yeah,
There was something, one of these sort of odd upside down type of situations here. Let me see if I can find it. And I have to, uh, yeah, this was earlier in the day. Actually, you know what? Let me switch the parameters of this map and then I'll bring it up. Because it was just one of those odd things. And just a second. So just give me a moment here. We are, by the way, I don't know how it got into somebody's brain that there was no show tonight. It's tomorrow night that there's no show. So obviously we're here. But normally we're on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. and the occasional Friday and Saturday. But when there's a storm around, but because the weather is so quiet and you know, we like to take advantage of taking some time off when we can. It's a good idea. So that's why we're taking tomorrow off. So there. Okay, so this was one of those upside down days, and this is from. I want to make sure I give credit to the person who uh, found this out. So let me just bring it up. So, those of you who may remember, Joe, you remember Cranky Weather Guy?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, a Cranky Weather Guy took himself off Twitter a few years ago, I guess, to give himself a break, and who could blame him? But now he's back, and he's back as Content Weather Guy.
Okay.
Okay. So I thank Contact Weather Guy for actually I'm really happy he's back because he's got such a he's so good at analysis, and I do enjoy his stuff. But anyway, uh, so he pointed out, he showed the temperatures today, it's the high temperatures, which I'm going to show you. He actually showed them on the hour, but I had to go to the high temperatures. So if you'll notice here on this map, the high temperatures along the shores of Hudson Bay in a place called Eowanic Meteorological Aeronautical Presentation System, or EMAPS, EMAPS. Okay. The high there after a low of 49 was 81. And in Port Severin Airport, Joe, the high there was 84. Okay. Now, if we go, I'm going to move. These are high temperatures today, and let me change this so you guys can see this a little better. Let me put a different background. Uh, so today in Jefferson Ashe County Airport in north central North Carolina, Joe, the high was 68. In in Asheville, it was 75. In Burlington Airport, is set got to 77. And South Hill, Mecklenburg Airport, 74. So this is one of those weird days. Gastonia, 79. And by me, I got to 78. So it was warmer on the shores of Hudson Bay, Joe, today than it was in the Carolina in parts of the Mid South.
Well, on the west side of Hudson Bay, I got a glimpse of places on the east side, and on the east side it was quite a bit chillier than 80 degrees.
Yeah, probably because the wind was off the water. There's a lot of missing stations here. Yeah, you go down even down southeast in James Bay. Um, Fort Albany only got to 70, and Moosonee, Canada. Have you been to Moosonee?
I remember the name. I've never been to Moosonee, but
There's always like they always get big highs in Canada. They always seem to go to Moosonee when they
yeah.
go the big highs in eastern Canada. 66 for a high there. So you're right. It was depending on where you were further north. That even made it more amazing. If you were further north, you were warmer.
Thank you, Christopher Rogers, for slightly correcting me. I had said the last time that New York City was in the 50s in August was 17 years ago, but he has corrected me with 16 years ago. Be it whatever it be, 16 or 17, it's been a long, long time since we've seen a temperature in the 50s in August at Central Park.
Yeah, we were a lot younger then.
Yes.
So across the country, pretty much on the quiet side, with a few exceptions. We're still dealing with extreme heat in parts of in Texas, particularly in South Texas as well as in Central Texas. Excuse me. We've got flood watches in southern Utah and northwest Arizona, and we have one working severe thunderstorm watch in western South Dakota and southeastern Montana, and various red flag warnings and fire weather watches and all the rest of it out in Nevada and Utah and in Idaho and Wyoming. So other than that, it is unusually quiet, particularly east of the Mississippi River. Because kind of sort of half kidding around about the fact that we have no catastrophic rains in the coming anytime soon. Uh, considering that sort of impacted the eastern United States twice in about 3 weeks. But nothing really much is going on, and the tropics in the Atlantic are pretty much dead at the moment. And here's what it looks like on the satellite loop tonight. And you see the rotation up in upstate New York. That's the upper low, very strong upper low that's dropped pretty far south for this time of year and created a day that you would normally see in maybe, in some years, mid-September, late September, early October. This was a really deep trough for August.
It is. This is, you talk about an anomalous or a very unusual pattern for this time of the year. And this, again, reminds me more of a pattern that you would see in April as opposed to August with that very strong upper level low and that big cool pool of air, which, as we spoke of yesterday, Joe, the anticipation was that after a bright sunny morning that we would see cumuliform or cumulus cloud cover begin developing in late morning and midday, and by afternoon, they may even give rise to a few scattered showers. Well, I will tell you, I was at the Dutchess County Fair with my family today. We arrived around 10:30. It was beautiful, blue sky, only a puff or two of fair weather cloud, but by the time we got to 2 or 3 o'clock, it was more or less overcast skies. There was a bit of a breeze blowing. It was kind of coolish. I actually wore, I instead of a t-shirt today and shorts, I wore long pants, a t-shirt, and over the t-shirt, a regular kind of dress shirt that I would normally wear in a cooler month because I was anticipating the coolness of the air, and it did get rather cool with those clouds. And sure enough, at 3 o'clock, for about 10 minutes, down came the rain. And I got to tell you that when you go to the Dutchess County Fair, one of the big attractions is the milkshakes. Yeah, they have and the milkshakes they serve at the Dutchess County Fair. I mean, if you've had milkshakes in your life, this maybe is near the top of the list in terms of flavor and how delicious it is. There was a long, long line of people waiting to, get up and get a milkshake. And now here comes 3 o'clock, and all of a sudden, here comes this sudden downpour. There's no place for these people, and a lot of them, I guess, listening to the forecast of the day before, which I'm not taking a knock at Albany, but I mean, I'm still scratching my head how they could possibly have put for Dutchess County mostly sunny, not even a mention of cloud cover in the afternoon, or even the chance, however slight, of a shower. But that was the forecast, and it seemed like most of the people on the line waiting for a shake figured that was going to be the case. Hardly any umbrellas popped up on that line, and the people it was amazing. I was under a tent across the way watching this, people standing online waiting to get a milkshake in the pouring rain. It was just amazing. Sky, as Renata mentioned on the chat board, skies just opened up for about 10 minutes, then it turned partly sunny. But it rained. We had some pretty hefty showers for a short while, and that was anticipated. We talked about it yesterday here on Joe and Joe. A 5 contour cutoff low centered over close to Albany mid-afternoon today. And I can assure all of you, when you see a 5 contoured cutoff, I don't care what time of the year it is, that's going to cause a problem when the air heats up in the afternoon. And that's exactly what happened. The air heated up. We had what Joe related to as self-destruct sunshine, and the sun helped to indeed cause that rapid development of the clouds. And eventually the clouds gave way or gave rise to some widely scattered showers. In a few places, they were rather heavy, as was the case if you were at the Dutchess County Fair at about 3 o'clock this afternoon.
And I've been following you along, so I put the upper air up so everybody could see what you were talking about with respect to that upper low. Yeah, I mean, just came straight south, east of James Bay, straight southward, and finally kicked that trough that caused all the problems over the weekend, kicked it out. Now that's in upstate New York tonight. Actually, it's already moved into Vermont, New Hampshire, and on its merry way into Maine tomorrow. So there might still wind up being some instability showers and maybe even the odd low top thunderstorm up in Maine. You can actually even see the Storm Prediction Center has general thunderstorm risk still going on into this evening in in the western half of Maine, New Hampshire into Vermont, Massachusetts, and parts of eastern New York, northeastern New York. And just to show you on the radar, still kind of busy there north of I-90. Actually, earlier this afternoon around 3 o'clock, I know there were showers that made it as far south as northern New Jersey. And then they just sort of fell apart. But you could see the rotation here is pretty obvious, spinning away in east central Vermont, west central New Hampshire, was kind of in that stretch in there. That's probably where the upper low is. And there have been some bands of thunderstorms going on in parts of Maine today, rotating around all this.
And Tom Contino on the chat board asking, isn't Dutchess County covered by NWS Upton? No, Tom.
No,
It is
Tom.
Albany. It is Albany's responsibility. And I will tell you, going all the way back to when Joe and I first, got started in this business in the late '70s, that Putnam County was Zone 13, and they too were under the jurisdiction of Albany. But sometime in the late '70s or early '80s, there was a decision made, and they handed Putnam County off to New York City. So Upton has Putnam County, but right across the border, just north of Putnam, Dutchess County is under the jurisdiction of the National Weather Service in Albany. I got to hand it to the guys and gals up at Albany, though. I mean, you look at the large piece of real estate that they have to or are responsible for forecasting. I mean, they've got a large. They got the Catskills, they have the Adirondacks, they have a portion of Vermont that they have to watch, and again, they go all the way down to. I guess Dutchess County could be called the Mid Hudson Valley. They're all the way down as far south as Dutchess County. They have that responsibility of forecasting. So maybe it's just something that just slipped through the cracks yesterday when they went mostly sunny for today. Um, but anyway, that Dutchess County is covered by the Albany Weather Service, not NWS Upton.
And we here at the Joe and Joe Weather Show, we're watching Albany's back when these little slip ups happen from time to time. We're always here to give gentle advice
Yes.
on what you should or should not be doing. We've got storms on the radar in Central Florida, and nothing crazy here. But that's all part of the old frontal boundary now is stalled off the Georgia South Carolina coastline and extending across Florida. Meanwhile, in the southwest in Arizona, we've got a bunch of flash flood warnings up, both in the northern half of the state and in the southeastern corner, with the odd severe thunderstorm warning here and there. And we've got some severe thunderstorm warnings up in parts of western Nebraska and western South Dakota, and a few showers and thunderstorms in clusters up in Montana. And the Storm Prediction Center has a severe thunderstorm watch that extends through parts of Montana into South Dakota at the moment, with a large area of marginal risk covering a good chunk of the western plains, and also a marginal risk in southwestern Arizona. We mentioned the general risk up in the central New England. Tomorrow, it's northern New England under general thunderstorms. It's uh, central and southern Georgia down to Florida and parts of the southern half of South Carolina under general thunderstorms, as well as the Gulf Coast. And then going back up through the plains, we've got two areas of marginal risk. One in eastern North Dakota, northeastern South Dakota, western Minnesota. The other one in the western half of Nebraska, northwest Kansas and eastern Colorado, and the tornado risk is less than 2% in all areas. Day three, two small areas of marginal risk in the western plains. So one in the western plains, the other one in eastern Utah, western Colorado, and southwestern Wyoming. WPC, um, pretty large chunk of the U.S. is going to get less than a tenth of an inch over the next 7 days. And in the Northeast, it's basically a tenth to a quarter with a little bit more, probably because of what's going on up in northern New England now. We also have some higher rainfall amounts in central and south Florida, up to several inches over the next 7 days with that stalled frontal boundary. Action in the southwest and into the central Rockies with some areas of a half inch to as much as a couple of patches of an inch and a half plus. And we're seeing some rainfall over the next 7 days up and down the coast of the and just inland of the coast of the Pacific Northwest. So, WCBS News Time, Joe, is 7:54. So I can check to see if they've updated, if NHC has updated and they have. This is where we've got some action. We've got Hurricane Gilma in the eastern Pacific Basin with top winds of 105 miles an hour. It's the season's first hurricane for the Pacific. And that X that you see here is to the west of that. So we'll jump to the Central Pacific Basin, and the Hurricane Center still waiting to see a slight improvement in organization that could result in the formation of a tropical storm later tonight or early Thursday as it moves west at 10 to 15 miles per hour. System is forecast to strengthen as it moves into the Central Pacific Basin on Thursday. So then um, Hawaii takes over as far as the any upgrades or advisories that they have to put out. And a I did have a satellite here to show you what's going on. So you can actually see we've got so this is Gilma right there, and this is the area that's to the west of it, and of course you can see the Hawaiian Islands, and it's heading, Joe, in that direction. And you look at the loop here. There's definitely a circulation there. I guess that they're just waiting for a little bit of a core of thunderstorms maybe to form near the center before they upgrade this. But I was looking at the uh, model guidance over the next the model track guidance for this system, and uh, if you cluster, you kind of take the mean position of all the models, which are fairly tight, going west or west northwest. The center will pass some, it's just south of the Big Island in about 4 days.
Now, wasn't there there was some kind of a tropical cyclone that passed near to the Hawaiian Islands last year, and the strong gusty winds induced by that system were partially responsible for the fires that occurred on the island of
Yes,
Maui.
that was that Category 4 hurricane that was down around like 10 degrees north. It was pretty far south, but yeah, it caused wind problems, well to the north. I don't remember the name of it though. I'm trying. What was it? Was it a D storm? Let me see.
Um,
Let's
I,
take a look. Let's see if we can go into the archives. Uh, Eastern Pacific current season sunny NHC news archives, other archives, track maps, marine products, and more. Let's see what they got here. Okay. Tropical cyclone report. Oh, here we go. Central Pacific 2023 and Dora. Was it Dora?
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, that's the only one they have listed here on the Central Pacific. They got the PDF here. Hurricane Dora. Yeah, that was on the 31st of July, 31st of July to the 17th of August of last year.
Right.
And peak intensity. Okay, I just saw the paragraph that said peak intensity. Where'd it go? Because it got pretty strong. Oh, here we go. Small hurricane rapidly intensified to its overall estimated peak intensity of 130 knots. And that was at 0Z, August 6th in the Eastern Pacific, while it was located 1,620 miles west-southwest of the southern tip of the Baja California Peninsula. Later that day, Dora crossed 140, moved it, and I remember now. I'm remembering now. They kept forecasting it to weaken, and it just absolutely refused. And I think it even became an annular hurricane. Uh, then it went into the Western Pacific and got classified as a typhoon.
Right.
Yeah,
It
so
did
that
continue to be named Dora, but the classification went from hurricane to typhoon, which is only a change in classification. It's the same storm, It's just that out in the Western Pacific, they prefer to call it a typhoon as opposed to a hurricane.
Yeah, I'll those of you put the link here for the on the chat board for those of you who might be would be interested in reading about this. This was from the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, and let's go back to that. Yeah, that's the only. What's KMZ? Oh, that's a download. Okay, gotcha. All right. So anyway, there's always all time. Yeah, it's funny because I wanted to get a see if we could see Ernesto because what's left of Ernesto as a post-tropical cyclone is going to pass close to Scotland uh, in the next day or so. But of
They
course,
they name storms up in Europe.
yeah, but of course, searching the internet trying to find something useful from the standpoint of weather from the European countries is a very difficult task. I was trying to find a satellite loop, couldn't find a loop. All I could get was still shots, and you couldn't really tell much from the still shot. But it's what's left of it is this low that is around 50 north, or it will be tomorrow morning around 50 north and 20 west. So that's this thing over here. And it's kind of inside a larger non-tropical 970 low that's between Iceland and Scotland, northern Scotland. So that southern part is what's left of Ernesto, and they got it going over Ireland and through central southern parts of Scotland uh, Thursday night into later Thursday night into early Friday, and then moving on its merry way up into Sweden and Norway, and then into the Arctic it goes. But it's still an identifiable post-tropical feature out there in the Atlantic. And yeah, for you snow lovers, if you look there on the upper left, you could just see the ever so slight hint of blue in southern Greenland, just to kind of nudge you a little bit with regards to the downhill, the downhill that we are on now from summer to fall and eventually to winter. So the upper low pulls out. The ridge builds in Oklahoma and Kansas, and that's pretty far west. So we still have, after during Sunday and going into early next week, we still have this sort of northwest flow in the upper atmosphere, and another cutoff low forms in eastern Canada and drops southward into upstate New York Monday night into Tuesday. So that could be the potential. There might be some thunderstorm and maybe even some severe weather risk with this. We'll see when we get there. And this low just sort of cuts off little upper low off the New Jersey coast Wednesday of next week, and then another trough that comes down behind it. So, yeah, we're going to warm up over the weekend and into Monday of next week, but we're not going to get hot. Uh, we may get well into the 80s on maybe Sunday, maybe Monday in some places, but if you're looking for another trip back into the low and mid 90s, doesn't look likely. Not with this upper air pattern.
Yeah, 90-degree temperatures are going to be few and far between, I think, between now and let's say the end of September. It's getting increasingly more difficult to get to 90 degrees, especially when you get into September. And yes, the late we did have some years back. We had 93, I think, on October 4th, but that was really a weird off the wall, you know.
Yeah,
That does not happen very often that you get that kind of a temperature that late in the season.
and particularly because we've been seeing these troughs dropping into the eastern part of the United States and into eastern Canada. So if that continues, I find it difficult. I find it difficult to envision how we could get that hot, even for a day, let alone 2 or 3 days back to back. So uh, you know, sometimes we've had years where we've had one of the longest heat waves on record. It was one that's I don't forgot what year it was, but I think maybe it was in the 50s that started in late August and lasted it like through the first week of September. So it's not impossible to get into a ridge position into the eastern part of the United States. It just that when you look at the long range, it just doesn't look like it's going to happen. So we've got this nice Canadian high. So we've got another cool morning coming up overnight with 50s and 40s. 40s in a lot of the cool spots. Probably back to the low and mid 70s tomorrow afternoon. And I think Friday we'll probably see mid 70s to around 80 in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. And the nice thing, Joe, is the fact that areas to the south, there's no, it's dry all the way down into the deep south. So are the dew points going to come up? Yes. But we don't have a real tropical feed of moisture coming into the southeast or into the Gulf states to spread northeastward. So the dew points come up, but they're not going to go to, I don't think they're going to go to anything excessive.
I agree. I agree. For example, I think Sunday, the dew point may get to about 62 or so. And when you've been in a summer where more often than not the dew points have been at or above 70, 62, we can handle that. There's no question that that's not going to be a major problem. And as far as beyond, that seems to be the topper. It doesn't look like we're looking at anything much higher than that. As you pointed out, Joe, something that's really tropical doesn't seem on the drawing board, at least for the next week or 10 days.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the GFS dew points here for Saturday. They're still in the upper. They're still in the upper 40s and low 50s. I mean, they're in the low 50s all the way down to northern Georgia and northern Alabama on Saturday, and even on Sunday, the dew points are still in the middle to maybe some upper 50s. And Monday, you start to see dew points climb up above 60. But if you want 70 dew points, you got to go to Wisconsin, you got to go to Iowa, up in Minnesota. So we don't see, later on in next week, as the week goes on, we see the dew points start to come up. It's just going to take time when you got a big dry air mass like this. It just takes time for the atmosphere to resaturate, and it's not going to really happen to the point where it's uncomfortable until we get into next week.
And the thing is, I've been playing around with tropical tidbits. Thank you, Mr. Levy, for that. And when you look at the upper air from now through, let's say, the early part of September, the thing that stands out, at least in my mind, is the fact that there are more than a few short waves coming down out of the out of Canada, or if you're looking across the big pond, Greenland to Europe, that seem to be inducing shots of cooler air coming in. And meanwhile, I see hardly anything, at least according to the model guidance, hardly anything that looks like it may develop into any kind of a tropical system. We've been talking about how traditionally on Labor Day there's always at least one tropical storm or hurricane that looms out in the Atlantic Basin or the Caribbean. This may be one of those rare occasions where
Where we don't have anything.
we don't have any.
Yeah. Well, it's busy in the Pacific right now, and usually when it's busy in the Pacific, the Atlantic side is quiet. So maybe we have to just wait for this burst of activity in the Pacific to die down, which it does start to die down right as we get toward the first days of September. There's a new dying hurricane that's going out into the Pacific graveyard. So perhaps we have to wait for that to play out. The only place I would look at maybe to pay attention, because I did see some hint of it on the model guidance. Maybe you want to keep an eye on the Western Caribbean and Central America because there's some hints, at least from what I saw. I'll just go to I'll bring the Western Atlantic uh, loop up here on tropical tidbits. There seems to be, uh, maybe a little attempt at some kind of gyre here. It's not particularly impressive on the 18Z run, but the pressures are a little lower than normal. Are going to be a little bit lower than normal in the Western Caribbean. So if there's something's going to happen, I think we might want to look there. And actually, on the 18Z run, something does develop south of Cuba, and then goes out west northwest into the Gulf of Mexico. But that's like 2 weeks from now. So again, we're gonna probably have to wait for the Pacific to just sort of drop off in activity before things start to happen. But I'll tell you this: if we go, I'll give it to the first 10 days of September. If we don't start seeing activity really pick up, those really aggressive forecasts for the hurricane season that have been out there for months now are going to be in serious trouble.
I agree. I agree. Well, I said, at the beginning of this season, even before, how all of these dire predictions because of La Nina and the very warm, unusually warm ocean water temperatures, and this was going to be this might possibly be the worst season on record. We might actually have to go, we'll be through all the names early, and we'll be working on a second list of names, I think. And so far, we've had nothing
Yeah.
no sign of that. Now, again, as you pointed out a few days ago, once we get into September, we could see, as we saw a couple of years ago, everything just suddenly start bursting forth. And
Right.
but again, as you said, if we don't see any sign of that in the first week of September, then you got to start scratching your head and saying to yourself, well, what's going on here? Are we really going
Well,
to have an active tropical storm or hurricane season?
well, I'm always tempted when everybody's on one side of the one side of the seesaw to take the other side. And I'll just put this out there because supposedly for you winter weather lovers, I think the most encouraging sign that you can see is if you start seeing an abundance of forecasts calling for another non-winter in the eastern part of the United States. The Farmer's Almanac, or one of the Farmer's Almanacs, whichever it is, whether it was the old Farmer's Almanac or the not so old Farmer's Almanac, if or it's already, after last year's brilliant forecast of the winter from hell, which for snow lovers, for in many ways it was, they've come out with the mild, wet, very little snow forecast for the Northeast, and so on. And when I heard that a couple of weeks ago, I thought, you know what? That's a good sign for snow lovers. So the more forecasts that you see in that as we go along, the more forecasts that we see like that, the get ready to jump on the other side because I've seen it often enough, Joe, in my 40 plus years, and you have too, how weather has a way of causing the most pain and embarrassment to the most number of forecasters by doing exactly the opposite of what they call for. So that's I'll just put that out there, and we'll wait in a couple of months and see where all of this is going. So, do you have Le Jeopardy de Brillard?
I do.
Oh, you do you?
I do. Yes.
Well, I cannot in any way come close to that magnificent performance you put on last night. So.
Oh, really? Well, it's you know, it's pure skill. This is Briller Jeopardy average.
Try your skill at Powerball if you're that good.
Yeah, well, whenever you think that you're on a hot streak somewhere, you put the numbers down, and what happens? Nothing happens. Briller Jeopardy average highs in these select cities, Joe. And we'll start off with San Francisco or San Francesca, if you're an I Love
Right,
Lucy.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Oh God. San Francisco is so difficult because is it the airport? Is it downtown? Because the closer you are to the ocean, it's like two different worlds there. You could drive 15 miles and go from 50 to 90. Um, I'll take a middle ground, so I'll say average high. I'll say 70. I'll say 72.
That's a pretty good guess. It's not accurate. I mean, not accurate. It's not the actual temperature, but It's not too far from what Mr. Briller has placed
Well, was
on
I too low or too high?
too high.
Well, Frank Scalera has 68 and Tyler Fienga has 69.
Well, Mr. Scalera, I'm going to ring the bell for you because that is the correct answer. 68 degrees for San Francisco in August.
I many years ago, 1977, I think it was. I went to San Francisco. I went to California. I went to Palm. Actually, I went to
You said
Phoenix.
20 years ago, 1977, Joe?
Yeah, in '77. How many?
That wasn't 20 years ago.
No, I didn't say 20. I said 40. 40 some odd years ago.
40 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. Um, so actually 47 to be exact. And went to Phoenix and drove from Phoenix to Palm Springs to LA and then drove up the coast to Monterey and then to San Francisco. Uh, it was cold in San Francisco. It was in the 50s much of the time. And this was in July.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you got to make sure if you go there in the summertime, particularly if you're staying somewhere close to the Pacific, you bring a coat.
So Betsy Luna on the chat board says she's paraphrasing Mark Twain. Mark Twain supposedly said, "The coldest winter I've ever spent was a summer in San Francisco."
That's true. Yeah, it's true. Um, okay, what's the next one?
Next one is Richmond, Virginia,
Richmond,
for high
Virginia.
temperature in August.
Um, I'll say 90.
Oh, close, Joe. Close.
Um,
Tyler Finger, in fact, with 89 is in Snake Country.
okay, so that means Frank R at 88 is correct.
That is correct. It's WCBS
Right,
88.
it's 88. WCBS news time is 8, what is it? 8:16.
It's so funny today at the Dutchess County Fair. At least three times I was asked, do you know what time it is? And I looked at my watch. I would say WCBS
WCBS news time. I
20.
do it. I do that here. I do that here with my friends at the dog park, and of course, I'm the only New Yorker there. They're all from Florida or someplace, or native North Georgians. Yeah, so I'll always do that. This Joe, what time is it? Well, WCBS news time.
It's sad. That's going to be a part of our lexicon that's going to go bye bye. 12:01 a.m. People asking when is the last when do they when does the hammer come down? 12:01 a.m. Monday morning. So the last full day of WCBS will be on Sunday. And incidentally, if you are able to pick up WCBS, and you can also tune in on the streaming service they offer tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. They're going to have a special 3 hour look back over the 57 years, some of the famous events that they covered. But it's going to be like everybody's going to be like a wave of nostalgia, I guess, as people tune in to listen to the waning days and hours of News Radio 880s. If you can tune in tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Special show on WCBS. Anyway, back to the
Well,
thriller.
I don't know. You noticed it, but uh, that is um, that is Jim Donnelly on the right, and I think that is Robert Vaughn on the left. I think
Or it might be
it's not Lou Adler because Lou Adler I don't think had a beard. I think that might be Bob Vaughn, Robert Vaughn. You know what I was thinking about too before let me come back. The other thing I was thinking about with this was the fact that I always thought that the names of the talent that they had when we were growing up were just great radio names. I don't know. It was just um, Lou Adler, Jim Donnelly, and a few others. Robert Vaughn, which I keep thinking that there was an actor Robert Vaughn,
the man from Uncle.
right? Um, they just had great names, and Jim Donnelly, I think, had one of the best radio voices.
It was it's a something that we're going to remember with great fondness. That it's just going to go bye bye on Sunday night. I don't know what they're going to do or how they're going to close out 57 years on Sunday night. Maybe they'll play the national anthem, or I don't know what they're going to do. It's I'll be listening, you know, with a hanky probably in my hand. Tampa, Florida,
When is the last day? Is it Sunday?
Sunday,
The
Sunday.
26th?
Right. They'll go. They transition and make the transition to ESPN Radio at 12:01. By the way, I found out that CBS Network News on the Hour will continue to be heard on the new
Yes.
sports show or the
Uh,
new sports radio station for at
for
least
like
8 months.
yeah, I read the same thing.
So who knows? At midnight, it'll be the end of CBS locally, but they'll just transition to you know CBS Network Radio. So, all right, Tampa, Florida, Joe, and everybody.
Tampa, Florida,
Average high temperature in Tampa in August.
92.
Ah, Joe, again,
Another
snake,
another miss.
another miss.
Okay, we've got Michael McGuire at 93. Maggie
Vincent
P.
Croce, well, Vincent Croce and Patrick Darcy and Frank R.
Not
and Chuck Cardillo.
and Betsy Luna.
Yes, all
90,
with
91.
yes.
And what's the next one?
Tucson.
Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll say 102.
Oh, that's a good guess, Joe, but it's unfortunately a little bit too hot.
A little too hot.
But Mr. Mr.
Rothmansky, Rothmansky with a century.
100. That's what it is. 100. And the fifth one before we go to the bonus city, fifth one is Washington D.C. And Norm Dvoskin, our good friend Joe, who we worked with for many years at News 12, used the definition, what is capital punishment? Capital punishment, he used to say, is living in Washington, D.C. in July and August without an air conditioner.
Well, since we've been talking 88 News Radio 88 WCBS New York, let's go with 88.
And you hit it, Joe. 88. Chuck Cardillo also hit it at 88. 88 degrees, the average high in Washington, D.C. And now the bonus city, average high temperature in Atlantic City. Or in the episode of the Flintstones, Frantic City, Frantic City.
Atlantic City. For August, I'll say 85.
85 degrees? Is it 85?
I don't know. Is it?
Do you think it's 85?
I don't know. Is it?
Well, I'll let you know in just a second because I lost it all of a sudden. I said,
Well,
this stupidity. Somebody just sent me something, and no, it's not 85. That's too warm.
too warm. Vincent Croce says 83. Patrick Darcy 81. Zim, which is Helais Veloy 82. Those too low or too high?
Patrick Darcy, you were in Snake Country, a little bit on the warm
Well,
side.
Rich Rothmansky's got an 80, so that's probably what it is.
There it is, 80 degrees in Atlantic City in
Oh,
August.
all right. That was the bonus city?
That was the bonus city.
Oh, okay. All right. So, since I brought it up on the page, uh, 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 don't turn the volume up so that you can listen to the jingles because then we get feedback. Okay. So put your headsets on if you can, if you want to listen to the jingles.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So we'll go out on we'll say goodnight. And I know, we've been talking about News Radio 88, and I think both of us, Joe and I, would both say that it would have been wonderful if either of us would have wound up working there. Of course, you can't do a counterfactual, then maybe we wouldn't be here. Who knows? But things happen the way they happen. Uh, but it was a station that was so much a part of our lives and our growing up, and then also with respect to our professional careers, colleagues that worked there that we've known over the years. So it was really like a gut punch when we found out a couple of weeks ago that they were going off the air. There's a part of me that refuses to believe it. But I always remember the jingles promotions that they had for their, for the station back in the late 70s. So I've got a compilation of them. So I'll just run a couple and say goodnight to everybody in the meantime. And we will see you on Sunday.
News is.
Good morning, I'm Lou Adler.
And I'm Jim Donnelly.
Money is.
Today's top business news, I'm Gordon Williams.
How to get you in and out of town is.
From the News 88 Chapter, this is Neil Bush.
No matter where the news is made, we're here to tell it best.
WCBS New York.
WCBS New York.
Complete with the
News is.
Good morning, I'm Lou Adler.
And I'm Jim Donnelly.
Sports is.
That's my field, and I'm Ed Ingalls.
Where it's at and where it's gonna be is.
This is Art Athens at the news desk.
No matter where the news is made, we're here to tell it best.
WCBS New York.
WCBS New York.
one more.
Good morning, I'm Lou Adler.
And I'm Jim Donnelly. Coming up in the next hour.
Norm MacDonald here. Stay tuned for my forecast.
Spot news, that's my assignment. I'm Art Athens.
You get
Get it on, maybe set your dial to all these 88s.
WCBS New York.
WCBS New York.